Thank you to the caucus and RDLA for inviting ARM and for all the work you've done in the past and the work that you're going to be doing in the future. What I wanted to do is first just take a few minutes to introduce the Alliance for Regenerative Medicine, or affectionately known as ARM, for those who are not familiar with us. ARM is very new. It was founded about 12 years ago, just a handful of members. Jumping ahead to today, we've grown significantly. We have over 370 members globally, and ARM is recognized as the voice of the regenerative medicine sector. We're not a traditional trade association in that we are an alliance. About 70% or so of our members are developers or manufacturers, and they run the gamut from small organizations, startup-y organizations with maybe 20 or so employees, to developers who are pre-clinic, to those that are in the clinic, and to a handful that are have therapies in the marketplace, as well as large multinational pharmaceutical companies. Additionally, we work with and have membership with patient groups, academic research centers, and major medical centers. And when we are developing policy, we work to incorporate all those perspectives to try to represent the sector. So next slide, please. So what are regenerative medicines? They are cutting-edge, state-of-the-art therapies. They differ significantly from more traditional pharmaceuticals that most of you listening in are probably familiar with. And those generally are focused on chronic care and treating the symptoms of the disease. Regenerative medicines are generally thought of as cell, gene, or tissue therapies. Gene therapies seek to modify or introduce genes into a patient's body. Cell therapy is the administration of viable or purified cells into the patient's body. And tissue engineering restores, improves, or replaces damaged tissues and organs through a combination of scaffolds, cells, and/or biologically active molecules. Regenerative medicines are generally single or very few limited injection therapies that target the root cause of the disease and are meant to provide a fix that at a minimum lasts a very long time and ideally are potentially curative. And I always use air quotes when talking about curative because this is such a new space that we don't have the long-term data yet to validate that statement. But the intention and goal is certainly that these therapies are curative. Can I go to the next slide, please? So what's the pipeline look like? As I said, these are very new. There are about 4 or 5 therapies that are regenerative medicines in the marketplace today. However, the pipeline is very flush and the promise is great. The graph on the left side of the screen projects the potential low, medium, and high number of likely approvals over the next 10 years or so. And the one on the right looks specifically at rare diseases, which would be about 50% of the approvals of the general regenerative medicine space. But most importantly, the projections are that in the next decade or so, about 500,000 patients will be treated with regenerative medicines. Next slide, please. So what is in the pipeline? As you can see from this slide, this graph, that the vast majority of the R&D currently is going on in the oncology cancer space. But I think the other big takeaway from this slide is the vast array of other disease states in which R&D work is going on. Very impressive, ranging from the ultra rare to diseases that plague large populations in the United States and globally, such as diabetes and Alzheimer's, spanning the gamut. So it's very exciting in this sector as to what is coming down the pipeline. Can we go to the next slide, please? And I want to be blunt and transparent. These therapies are not inexpensive. But you have to understand and remember that looking at their impact, their value, the durability, and the potential curative nature of these therapies, they will result in long-term savings to the healthcare system. We worked with the Marwood Group earlier this year, and they produced a study that looked at 3 rare disease states, multiple myeloma, sickle cell disease, and hemophilia A. Looked at how much those diseases cost the system currently and projected out for the next 10 years, and then putting in, if there were regenerative therapies developed and treating those diseases today, how much the cost would be. And they came to the conclusion that there would be significant savings, over $30 billion in that 10-year window time frame, and that a good portion of those savings would be recognized within the first 5 years. And so next slide, please. So what are ARM's Cures 2.0 priorities? Well, first of all, I want to commend those who were involved in the 21st Century Cures Act and the sponsors, in that ARM was working with many of you on that effort and was very pleased that it included a provision that established the RMAT approval pathway with FDA. RMAT standing for Regenerative Medicine Advanced Therapies. This was an expedited approval pathway that helps bring these therapies to patients in a faster yet still safe and efficacious manner. So looking ahead to Cures 2.0, our priorities are presented on the screen. The first being that we are working hard to remove the barriers that are currently in place, such things as best price and AMP reporting calculations that were put in place decades ago, well before any therapies such as the regenerative medicines and how they work were even conceived of. And to be honest, the system in these barriers are stopping the development of reimbursement models that will help get these therapies to patients. So these reimbursement models need to be updated to reflect the new world that we are entering. And continuing along that theme of this new world and that these therapies are so new and so different, the FDA needs to be encouraged to exercise appropriate flexibility in their review of the manufacturing and review of chemical standards to make sure that these barriers do not delay the availability of these therapies to patients. I want to make it perfectly clear that FDA has been a wonderful partner to this sector in advancing these therapies and trying to understand them, and they certainly understand them, certainly understand their potential, and have been an excellent partner in working with them to get these therapies to patients. Additionally, ARM is advocating for modernization of the new technology add-on payment, or affectionately known as the NTAP program, which is designed to help specifically with reimbursement shortfalls for new therapies like regenerative medicines. Again, the issue is this: the NTAPs were designed with a certain therapies in mind, and the program needs to be updated to reflect what's going on in the world today. And then finally, the newborn screening program. ARM supports efforts to update and improve this very important program. As everybody knows, early diagnosis can lead to early treatment, which will certainly lead to saving lives. So also a very important part of our Cures 2.0 agenda. So next slide. With that, I want to thank everybody. I've given people a lot to digest. But I appreciate your attention. And Annie, I'll turn the microphone back over to you.